right, we got a bunch of people flowing in. What's up, everybody? How are we doing today?
Sup, sup.
What up, Ty? Got
Oh,
a
looks good
minute.
now.
Yeah, man, I just had to adjust. That's all it was. It was just a slight adjustment. Is all we needed. So, all right, guys, we're gonna get rocking here. I know there's gonna a couple people that are gonna obviously flow into these trainings. So, those that do not know me, I want to introduce myself before I cover what we're gonna hit today. So, my name's Aaron Letty. I'm the head coach over here at Results Driven. So, I get the honor, privilege, blessing, whatever we want to call it today, of getting you guys essentially to the level of success of where you guys want. And we love doing these types of community trainings and community lives because we get to drop some really cool bombs of knowledge on you. So, guys, go to the chat really quick for me. Who has been on a training with me in the past? Just say me in the chat, or if you have not been on a training with me, say no. Let's get some engagement going up in here. Boom. Roger knows what's up. He's clearly been on a training with me because he hit the boom. Who else, guys? I see some familiar names that are in there. And guys, remember, you guys are going to get out of this what you guys put into it for today. And there's going to be a lot of cool things of what we're going to cover. So there's going to be a lot of questions. And we're going to go through, obviously, in the chat and help you guys out with any of the questions of what you guys have. If you guys know and you guys have been on a training with me, I love to make these super unformalized and I love to just get the value driven back to you guys on exactly what it is of what you guys are working on and what you guys want to get out of today. So, I brought one of my good friends in today. Ty. Ty is with us. Ty is one of the owners and founders of DataSift. And what we're going to cover today is we're going to go through and we're going to talk about really data. We're going to talk about data and why data is so important to us as real estate investors. He's going to showcase a lot of very ninja tactical things of what I would call it, where we're producing crazy results. I know in my business, all I focus on is the process of what he's going to really hit on today, from deep prospecting, how this works, and when you should do this, right? And guys, the reality is do me a favor, go to the chat. Who wants to get more with less? If you guys have been on a training with me, you guys know I'm a very big believer of doing more with less, meaning that you don't have to spend $1 billion on marketing in order to get the return of what you guys want. And that's exactly what you guys are going to learn today. Okay. So stay with us. I want you guys to stay locked in, stay engaged, just stay awake for me in this whole entire training. So exactly, who wants to do less with more, right? So all right. So what I'm going to do, I obviously introduced Ty. I'm going to let Ty go through some things, and then if you guys have questions as we're going along through this, we are going to help you guys out. If you guys have questions in the chat, be more than happy. I'll be in there as well, and we'll make this a fun little hour of what we got for today. Ty, I'm going to pass it over to you, my brother.
Of course. Thanks, man. For those who don't know, like Letty was saying, I am one of the owners of DataSift. If you have no idea what we do, we basically are like a sales and marketing CRM platform. So we also focus primarily on the entire marketing side, as opposed to like the actual CRM side. We do a little bit of it, but we're mostly known for our data, our marketing systems, and how we integrate AI and all that good stuff. And one of the owners is also Tyler Austin. So me and him own a couple different real estate businesses. We do like 2 to 3 million a year in assignments and wholesaling and a little bit of flips here and there, some commercial and land development too. And the entire thesis of what we do is we run things like this, like these masterminds, these coaching calls, whatever you want to call them. We do it with a ton of our partners, and obviously Letty is a really good friend of ours. And we also distill all of the things that we learned from our own businesses and put them into our platform, which is DataSift. And then we also distill all those lessons down into the community, and it's a nice feedback loop of what works, right now. And this is a training on basically like what we do from a marketing sense, from market analysis to validating what we're going to do before we actually spend a dollar, the marketing system, and then some really, really fancy AI workflows. And this is kind of like a small version of what we do. We run something called a 5-day deal flow challenge, and it's about 20 hours of a live event. And I'm going to try and distill down the highest amount of information as fast as humanly possible. And if you've never seen any of the webinars or talks that I do, I'm all about like value density and trying to get as much as I possibly can in a short amount of time. You guys are going to have questions. I know that. So just throw them in the chat. And then at the end, Letty and I will stay on as long as we need to, just to try and bridge the gap as much as we possibly can. And for this specific call, the way I'm not super into like slide decks and things like that. So what I did is I made this. It's basically like a walkthrough of like everything that I'm actually going through now, and I'll paste that in the actual chat itself. That way, you guys have all of the stuff that I'm going to go through, and everything that's broken down into these kind of like layers. So we start with Market Finder, which is all about market analysis. We're going to go through and actually pull some data inside a SIF map. We're going to show you a sold properties loop. And then we're going to, so my really big thing is, so like we spend about 15 to 20,000 a month in marketing to hit that 2 to 3 million a year in revenue. So we're all about like efficiency and very, very high net margin businesses. We try to stay away from big scale in all of our businesses, but specifically that's kind of my ethos or my belief system, as if you will, as far as the real estate side. So I'm going to start first with Market Finder. And what Market Finder does, and by the way, if you guys want, what we have a lot of people do is like they'll just grab a trial and then literally just log in and do everything that I'm showing you guys kind of step by step. And everything that I'm also running through is what Letty is also running. That's fair to say, right? You're going through this whole market analysis flow. Okay. So what I did for myself is this kind of first sheet here breaks down every single zip code and every single neighborhood in my entire market. And this is I use this flow paired with Market Finder and a tool called Claude. They're like the best AI company probably in the world right now. If you have no idea who they are, go into YouTube and just throw in what is Claude and you'll see some crazy stuff. But basically, it can execute and build things on your behalf. So we like to use our platform with Claude to build out these workflows and things like that. And to show you guys like what Market Finder actually looks like, if we kind of like look at it holistically first, the big thing that I always think about for like when I'm doing analysis in general is where are the investor transactions actually located in a given area. So if we hop over here, the monthly investor transaction volume of the whole US for, this last 6 months average is about 100,000, properties or deals that happen every month. And this is all interactive and you can search it up here. But if I go down to Tennessee, if you guys didn't know, my market is Knoxville, Tennessee, which is Knox County. And the darker these counties are, the more investor transaction volume there actually is in this particular area. So if I zoom on into Knoxville here, and I drill down even further, the first big thing that people do is whenever they're doing their market allocation in terms of like, I have $10,000 I'm going to spend a month or 1,000 or 500 bucks, it doesn't really matter. We always want to start with the highest investor transaction volume area first. So like in a given area, for me, that's always going to be 37920. And you can see how dark that zip code is, or you can like look at it at this kind of table view here, and it will go from greatest down to least all the way down towards the bottom there. And one thing that is pretty much proprietary to us that was a really big issue when we were like first building this out is some zip codes are like if you go in Los Angeles, there is a couple zip codes that have like 50,000 homes there. And they're basically like mini cities. So zip codes at times can be just way, way too small. But neighborhoods, as we all know, like real estate's hyper localized. We have found that neighborhoods are really the best. And I'll show you guys an example of a deal that we're trying to put in contract that we got yesterday, but it is from our top performing neighborhood. And this really shows you like the path that we actually go down. So if I look here, this Colonial Village is the highest performing or most amount of investor transaction volume, and it's had 29 deals over the last 6 months. And I always get asked this question is like, what do you guys constitute as an investor transaction? And the way that we do it is we say, here are all the people that have purchased two or more transactions in the last 6 months. And then we like basically tie all these things together where maybe you have multiple entities. So we know the signing member of all of those, entities or LLCs, if you will, and we bring them all together into one clean, uniform registry where anytime one of those entities purchases a property, that counts as one investor transaction. And then we spin all those up and then we add them up in the last 6 months and we break it down by the zip code and then by the neighborhood. And we found that like probably 80% of all investor transactions are like in the top 25% of all areas. So if we were to look at Colonial Village, like this tiny, tiny, tiny little pocket, and I'll zoom in and like just remove the boundaries so that you guys can actually see this. But like this little pocket here has had 29 investor transactions in the last 6 months. So if you're like balling on a budget or, just trying to build a system that scales really well while keeping your cost per acquisition really low, what we teach is you come in and you want to allocate and maximize all of your marketing dollars in one neighborhood or one zip code, and then go down to the next, maximize it and squeeze the most out of it as you possibly can. And you're going to sequentially move down from the highest amount of investor transactions down to the least amount. And when you do that, you're basically increasing the odds that you get in front of opportunities because you're focusing on these really dense areas with not a lot of people to market to, but lots of deal volume. And when you get traction in these, you basically take the revenue that you generated maybe from your first kind of run of marketing at Colonial Village. Then we're going to roll it down into Burlington and then into Chilhowie Hills and then into Vestal and then to Berkshire and sequentially move down that path. And we won't get too deep into like the actual like marketing systems because we only have an hour, but we always want to do the cheapest marketing touch. So maybe like a call, we're going to exhaust all the people in, Colonial Village, and then we're going to move to direct mail, and then we're going to exhaust all the people from direct mail, and then we're going to do deep prospecting. We'll talk about deep prospecting in a minute. And if we still can't reach them, then we move into well, maybe door knocking or just like the most expensive marketing touches that you can give down to the cheapest. And once you maximize each of these areas, you take the revenue that you get from them and then roll it into the next areas. Whereas what most people do is they're just going to go to PropStream. And I don't know why, but like everyone typically does things by the county whenever they first start. So like this is like the example flow that I see almost 80% probably of all people do. They'll just go in, they're going to pull a list from Knox County. Maybe they pull the first 10,000 records from PropStream and then they just do marketing to it. As opposed to like, what is the best neighborhood? What is the best zip code? And then organizing all their marketing into an actual system. And that's what drives this consistency. And that's how we're able to keep our cost per acquisition so low because that's what incrementally scales up. So the first step figuring out where the best zip codes and where the best neighborhoods are. And an example of this AI workflow is you can have Claude log into your SIFT account for you and then make this entire, Excel sheet where it's like, here are the best zip codes from A to Z. And we don't have a ton of time to go over that. I want to show you guys the AI workflows and some of the other ones. But a great example of this, if you were to just look at the, let's see, so if I'm in the neighborhoods, right, these are Colonial Village is still number one. But in some cases, you see this little star ranking over here. If you were to just look at the amount of investor transactions that are actually happening in an area, and this one right here, I'll highlight it just so everyone can see really well. It has a lot of investor transactions that are actually going on. So like 11, which is a decent amount for one particular area. But the difference is, if you don't know anything about Knoxville, Old City Knoxville is this like super luxurious area in downtown Knoxville, and the median sale price is 4.2 million there. And Claude did a really good job of like, hey, this is an outlier. The months of supply is like pretty high, and it's a one-star ranking because the odds that someone actually sells to you from an investor perspective when the median sell price is that high is extraordinarily low. And I actually went and looked at the properties that were tagged as investor transactions here, and there are these crazy one-off developments that they're like doing these huge teardowns and building massive like development apartment complexes and things like that. So yes, they were investor transactions, but you can see like Claude and AI does a really, really good job of diving much, much more granular, where it's like it's not always just about investor transactions. It's also about like the sentiment of that area. And Market Finder is like all about the hard data and like that quantitative element. And then there's this whole other kind of area of like opinions and like, is it a good area based on crime rankings and things like that? And you can see here, it also does a really good job of breaking down like crime and safety data. That's also not Market Finder, but it can just do research in each of these zip codes. So the first step is we have to do market analysis, and like this is an example of like what extraordinary looks like. And I can put it in the chat too if you guys want to see what it looks like, and you can replicate it, do whatever you want to do there. But that's the first step. So figure out the best areas. If you have a bigger budget, you can start at zip codes, but I always recommend people to start at neighborhoods. It's just a big advantage that you can build into your business, and that's where I would like to start if I were you guys. So that's the first step, Market Finder. Then once you find areas that you really like, you can use sold properties and SIFT to pull data and also validate that there are transactions going on there and what lists perform well, etc. So the simplest way to do this, if we come into SIFMap, so this is where there's 1,000 things that you can do here. I'm not going to get too deep into all of them, but an example of this is if you wanted to come in and do Knox County, Tennessee, which is obviously my market, and you hop over into presets. So what presets are basically here's a set list, maybe in my tier one or my tier two zip codes or neighborhoods. And these are the real, configurations that I use. So I like single family with 50% equity and a stacked list. A stacked list is basically a property that has two or more distressors that are attached to it. So it can be anything from like they are tax delinquent and maybe they're absentee, or maybe it's a probate record that's actually tied in with a out of state owner or something like that. So if I go into single family, 50% equity stacked, that number goes from about 200,000 properties in all of Knox County down to 5,944 properties. And if I want to get even more granular, it's like, I want to be in Knox County, but I want to go down to the neighborhood level. If we come back, remember Colonial Village is one of the top performing areas inside of Knox County. So if I come on down to neighborhoods, I use a tool called Whisper. It's like a AI voice tool that I love. I highly recommend it. But Colonial Village, and you can see it will actually write for you, and it makes it a lot easier whenever you're doing like comping or putting notes inside of your actual acquisitions, or there's just a lot of use cases, but I love doing it. So Colonial Village is my top performing neighborhood, as we found right there. And if I want to do stacked 50% equity single family and just in Colonial Village, watch, it went from 200,000 down to 6,000 in the whole county, down to 96 properties. And if you remember, there were 29 investor transactions just in this one area. So we went from here is Knox County. There's a ton of investor transactions that are going on. There's 142 on average every single month. But if we wanted to focus just in the last 6 months in one given area, Colonial Village is the number one neighborhood. And then if we want to actually pull data to prospect and to market to these people, we can go from Knox County, single family 50% equity, stacked, and the top performing neighborhood, and that's just 96 properties. Makes a massive, massive difference whenever you're thinking about like trying to scale. Because if you just market to these 96 people and you're very, very specific and like squeeze the most out of it that you can, there are definitely deals in here. And I'll show you an example of a common workflow inside of sold properties that actually validates all of these things beforehand. Letty, is this with everyone? Does this make sense? Cool. So from here, if we wanted to come in and we're like, okay, I love this area. I have a couple lists that I'm thinking about pulling. I'm not quite sure yet. And then we pop open sold properties. It's the same concept as this entire like pick your state, pick your county, pick your zip code, and pick your neighborhood. So if we come in, we're not going to be talking about the AI score today, but we just want to talk about just like one simple list. And a list that historically has done really well over a long period of time is anything matched with vacant. And sold properties is kind of taking the data from Market Finder and then actually applying like what types of lists are we actually plugging in here. So if I go, we're already on Tennessee, and then we'll go down into Knox County, and then let's move over into Colonial Village. And the big difference here is whenever you come over into advanced filters, you can basically do the same type of filtering that you're doing inside a SIF map, but bringing that over into the actual sold property side. So if you want to maybe pull like one type of list and one type of actual property itself, we can see how many properties we would actually market to versus how many of that same exact list actually sold. So if we scroll down, we click on distressors, and let's just do vacant because vacant's the one that we know has performed really well historically. And then we need to, I only do single family. It's just a lot easier for us. Like we have dabbled in other things, but it's just worth it to focus on like the best ones. And over the last just November, there was one investor transaction that fit this exact criteria. And if you wanted to come into this same area in Colonial Village, and we'll come in and I'm just going to remove the stacked here, and we're still in Colonial Village. we can tie back in equity. So we'll put, any equity here. And then we scroll on up and we want to do just vacant. Come back over here and we'll do vacant. 20 properties. So there are 20 properties that fit this exact criteria. So in the last 6 months, there were three investor transactions that fit this exact parameter over 20 properties. So you can basically say that there are, for every eight people that you market to, or maybe seven or six, whatever 20 divided by three is, if that is a guaranteed investor transaction based off historical data. Super, super crazy because you can basically validate anything that you're going to market to with by the list, by the neighborhood, by the zip code, or by the county in general, and validate everything before you ever spend a single dollar. And this is the second step. So we're going to validate by the market finder and what areas have the best performing neighborhoods and zip codes. We're going to move over into SIFMap to actually start pulling some lists, get an idea of how many records are on each of these, records, whether that is a vacant list, a stacked list, or something like that. Then we have sold properties. We're going to say, like, yes, there were indeed investor transactions, and we've niched down because we're focusing on exclusively that particular pocket. And this is where you can get a lot more deeper in terms of like the level of, I don't want to say advanced, but this is where things that like, unless you've seen one of our talks, very, very few people do things like this. So we oftentimes pull data directly from the county and we call it first to market data, which we're not going to get too deep into today. But basically what first to market data is you're the first ones to market to them the day that it hits a list. Maybe it's a foreclosure from the county or maybe it's a probate record that just got filed. And obituary data is one of like our most like highly reviewed case studies in the entire community because what people will do is when someone passes away and they have a property, if it's not like properly set up, it's not getting inherited by anyone, it's not going into probate, and a lot of times it just sits vacant. And we are pulling in obituary data every single day nationwide, and this is something that we've been testing a lot of. And say you want to pull in all of this data, where we store all of this information before we actually do any marketing in general is in something called records. And records, we really like filters here. So like there's a ton of different ways that you can actually filter your entire like list of all the people that you're marketing and prospecting to. And this is the actual example of the deal that I was talking about. So if we come in and we go to lists, I'm just going to filter by obituary data. Obituary data is coming into SIFMAP in the next like 2 weeks. So I've been testing it a lot recently. And if we want to come in, I just have obituary filing here, and we're going to filter my entire record set where we just are pulling in all of the people who have an obituary filing in the last 6 months. And we do things by clean and incomplete. Incomplete just means that it's missing some of the property details that you can come back and enrich. But for the sake of this, just imagine if we were on all of them, there's about 645 people that have hit the obituary or death certificates, if you will, from the beginning of this year to now. And then if we wanted to like, give an example of what that looks like and we scroll on down here, these are all of the lists that this top property has actually been shown. So driving for dollars, we do a lot of like, AI things with driving for dollars, but the obituary filing, it's owner occupied, it has low income, senior homeowners, it's free and clear, and it's tax delinquent. I get asked this a lot, but the difference between tax delinquent and free and clear is free and clear means there is no mortgage that's actually present. But tax delinquent shows that there are property taxes that have not been paid at the county level typically. And how it's handled in my market is tax delinquency and mortgage foreclosure are treated the same. So if you don't pay your taxes, you're basically sent to foreclosure eventually, but it's usually like, 2 to 5 years depending. And this particular property that I'll show you guys is this one down here. So if I scroll on down, so this one, I put on my filter. So this is, if you're following along inside of this guide, this is where all of this is. So I put on that same filter of the obituary filings itself and 1663 Dick Lonis Road in Knoxville. It has the same obituary filing. It's a free and clear property and it's absentee. So if I wanted to come in and actually look up that individual property, I'll show you guys what it looks like. The way you would do that is you come up, search records, address, and then it was 1663. No, that was not it. What was it? 1663, Dick Jonas. Let's see. 1663, Dick Jonas. Is that the one? Yeah, this one here. So this is the one where we started marketing to it. It's in our top performing neighborhood, so it's in Colonial Village. And inside of the system, these were all the phone numbers that we had available. I know it's kind of hard to see, but where it has that little red line on each of these phone numbers, it shows that it was disconnected. So these numbers we were not able to call them. And we called this one, it was a landline, and it was just a dead line directly. So from this, we're like, okay, this is where 99% of people would just do nothing. Like they're like, well, we couldn't reach them. And because this owner is actually deceased, mail wouldn't work here because we know it's an obituary filing. And I know this because it has the obituary filing here. It's vacant, it's free and clear, and it's an absentee owner. So it's basically a vacant, absentee, abandoned property. And if we come in and look at it on Zillow, this is like the investor special. Like, look at this thing. And we will I'll scroll down so you guys can actually see it. Also, I see that my vacant sounds like bacon, so I'll work on my pronunciation, I guess. I don't know why it's taking so long. Well, either way, that's it. If it'll load, there we go. So what we do, anytime that we have a property that's like, we can go out and walk it, and we're local in Tennessee or in Knoxville, so it's a lot easier for us to go and walk properties. But obviously, this is one where probably don't need to walk it. We're just going to assume it's a full renovation because, I mean, look at it. And from here, we're assuming like this is a full rehab. We can't reach the owners, and more than likely, like this is going to be one that has to be sold to an investor because the amount of work that would have to be done here, it's gonna, I mean, it would cost, this will probably cost us like 125, 135K on a rehab. And whenever you're looking at this, if you even listed it back on market like a hotel or list with an agent, it's probably going to be bought by an investor on the market. So this is like the dream state from an investment perspective because the pitch that you're actually giving to the seller is really, really good because it's like, look, you can go to market, someone like me is going to buy it and you're going to have to pay all these fees on top of it. So this is kind of the thought process of like, we want to find because we're in the best area. We know that it's validated because we found that vacant has a very, very high efficiency in this area. And I know that it's on a really good list. That's from our obituary data. And this is where there's something, this is probably our most advanced AI workflow, and it's called deep prospecting. What deep prospecting is using AI to find the hardest to reach individuals that you could not reach in any other way. So an example, and why I always like talk about this, is we can't mail this list because it's vacant. Or sorry, we can't mail this person because it's vacant. Vacant, bacon. And then we have no numbers that we're actually able to call because this one was dead and all the other numbers that were available were disconnected. So there's no way to reach them. And Claude, which is an AI, tool, workflow, whatever you want to call it, allows you to build out these very specific workflows that execute on your behalf. And this is an example of what one of those workflows actually looks like from start to finish. So this is a way that you can kind of like interface with Claude. And the whole point of the challenge and why it's like 15 to 20 hours long is we teach 10 different workflows that are just like these. And I'm going to show you guys what deep prospecting work looks like. And then I'm going to show you what running comps looks like. And then running rehabs looks like, all using AI. And this is the whole point, I think, of why a lot of you are actually here to understand what this process looks like in today's age. So I said, hey, can you please deep prospect this property? It has an obituary filing actually attached to it. And I list out the address there. And this is the date of death that we found was March 10th, which is probably, yeah, almost 3 months ago. So we're scrolling down and it's like, I'll deep prospect the following with the established framework. And let me load in all this methodology and the code base and then all of the web research. And I won't take you guys through this whole thing, but it does a lot of research in general. And it's like, oh, here's a breakthrough. And it lists out, this is actually owned by Timothy Fitzgerald, and David and Gracie Fitzgerald. And I'll show you guys what the end output looks like. I'm just trying to show you like this is all of the entire process that AI is going through, doing all of this research. And you can say or see here, it confirms like that is the exact date of death on the match with this memorial list that is actually the obituary filing that it found online. And it lists out like, hey, they passed away Tuesday morning, surrounded by the family, and it has this in quotations because it actually did web research first. Then we keep scrolling down, and cyber background check, if you don't know what that is, it's basically a free skip tracing resource that's online. So it is researching all of these different skip tracing lists, all of these obituary filings. It has access directly to my county recorder inside of Knox County, so it can actually like like validate ownership and validate liens against the people and all that good stuff. And we keep on scrolling, and it's like here is all of the details that it found. First, this is the actual like parcel address and all the information. And we break down deep prospecting into four levels. The third level is that it's a deceased owner, and we're going to do heir and estate research. So it's like, here is everything that we could possibly find. Title and ownership, this is the whole story. So David and Gracie, they bought this property in 1971. In 2004, there was a life estate deed where the remainder to the son Timothy is restrained to David and Gracie, basically saying he's going to be the one that controls this estate, setting up a will or a life estate. And it's like breaks down the entire breakdown of Gracie, who, if you remember right, David was the person who passed away that obituary filing was actually on. Gracie was his wife, and Timothy is his son who now controls the entire estate. I'm trying to summarize, right? Because this is a lot of information, but the big thing here to sell, you need both the signatures of Gracie, who is alive, controlling the life estate, and Timothy, the remainder and controller of the actual property, and lists out all the information. By the way, it knows that Gracie is 89 and now resides at a different address than the one that's actually listed on file. So right off the bat, if you remember, we skip trace the owner, which is Timothy, or sorry, David, who is not even alive anymore. That's why none of the numbers worked because everything was disconnected, and the only phone number that was actually like connected ended up being a dead number in general. And you would never even know that this existed unless you ran an AI workflow just like this. And as we're scrolling down, it actually gives you the full air map and the whole kind of story as well. So here are all the children, here's the spouse, and all the people that you need to reach out to, including the 16 great grandchildren per the obituary. And this is where I know there's a lot of like curative title things that are very popular right now. So an example of how this would work in a curative way is if Gracie wanted to sell, but Timothy didn't, you could buy out the portion of the control of the ownership from Gracie, the spouse of the decedent, and then take control over 50%, and then basically force the sale of the home, just as an example. And this is how these advanced workflows actually come about because you're using AI to do all this research. And we've been doing this for a long time, but back in the day when we were trying to put pull all this together ourselves, you would have VAs doing this entire process. And it worked, but like the leverage that AI has given people, I'm not a believer that AI is going to replace everyone and everything's going to be like robots doing things. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're moving towards like a hyper lean infrastructure using AI as all of this leverage. And you can do things that would normally take like a 10-person team with like three people. And that's how we're able to be so efficient on like net margin of the entire business, keep our cost per deals low and all that good stuff. Then it takes all of these and runs publicly available skip tracing. So that's things like the cyber background checks that I was talking about. True People is another really big popular one. And we have all the details of this. And then we run it through another workflow saying, hey, this was awesome. This is me talking. Awesome. Can you now do a full skip trace run through Tracerify of all the decision makers and then run that through Trustpilot's API, our TrueSights API, and score them all? And that's me saying Trestle. Trestle is basically a tool that tells you all the phone numbers that are available and the ones that have the highest likelihood of actually reaching them. So here are all of the numbers that came back from a skip tracing perspective. These are specifically Timothy's, and these are the ones that came back for Timothy and Gracie. So basically the son and the wife of the decedent. We come through, we called this number. It was the first number available because what this workflow does is scores all these individual phone numbers. And just by what we've done, this is all being executed by VA. So VA is doing all this, hands it to our team for them to call. It's like, hey, already done all this research. Here's all of this. Here's this PDF. If you need any more information, call these numbers, get a hold of them. Now we're talking to like, yeah, we could be interested. And now we need to run the entire workflow to actually run comps on this property. And we're also going to run rehab costs on this property. This is like, I was an appraiser like back in 2015 before I was doing all this. This workflow is probably the single best, like time saving, like anxiety ridding workflow that we have because I don't know about you, but anytime we would comp properties, I'd be like, I hope I'm right. It feels like it'd be this, but you never really know until you like pull the trigger on it. And you scroll on down, it's like, yep, great. It's running all the same analysis that it was doing. And then eventually, you can even say like, hey, I just found a strong candidate of like two different comps here and actually lists them both out. And then we come on down and it gives you the same thing. Here's a full comp analysis of this entire property. Gives you all of the adjusted prices, percentage of similarity. So like you can see, this is the one that's the most similar here, 94%. This one is the least at 60 and it weights all that and also gives you the distance, which by the way, crazy, right? And then it gives you a low, mid, and high as far as ARVs go. If you don't know what ARV is, it stands for after repair value. I think, this is like massive lump of salt. I always tell people like do not become overly reliant on these workflows because it's very addicting to just like basically take it at face value and don't check it at all. So what I do is I typically will go at the midpoint and then actually read all these comps. This property is probably right at 250. So somewhere between like this low and mid. And could you push, 280? For sure. But I'm not, we're trying to buy this at a place where like low to mid, we're going to be fine no matter what. And because this is a massive renovation, we're trying to make a lot on it because it's going to be a full gut, just based on the photos that I showed you guys. So then we come on down and it's at 245. I think it's probably 250, which is fine. Then I say, amazing. Can you now run the full rehab estimation on it? It's more than likely to be a full renovation because it's in such bad shape. We aren't able to get photos yet because we haven't walked it, but you can tell by the street view image and the screenshot that I'm giving you here that it's in terrible shape and it's probably going to be a full renovation. I actually took a screenshot of that same one that I showed you guys. And then we scroll on down and it's like, yep, no problem. And this is all set up based off like how I like to actually structure things, but there's kind of like five categories of levels of renovation. So like tier five is like luxury. And tier one in this case would be probably something along the lines of like section eight to like rental grade. Tier five is like the absolute best finishes that you can have on a rehab. Tier one is somewhere in the middle of like, the bare minimum that you can get to list it back on market. It's the best way to think about it. So in this case, it's like, yeah, recommended tier three range that matches the ARV of my comps. Big deal because it's taking all of the actual photos and all of these elements from all of these different comps here and then blends them all together. And it's like, this is probably tier three. This is the type of finishes that it has. That's the kind of renovation that we need to actually do ourselves. And then gives you a rough lowdown on all the material costs and the labor costs for all of it, giving me a grand total of about 122,000. It's probably going to cost us like 115 to actually rehab it, but pretty damn close. And it also gives you very like, you know, contingency at 10%, permit pulling. These are a little bit high. It's probably going to be a little bit lower than all that on the permit costs. But the point is, within like 30 minutes, we pulled in a property that was going to be pretty much found by nobody, ran comps on it, ran the full rehab estimation, and now we have an actual like offer with an ARV that's very supported, which is about 36,000. We could probably go up to 45,000 if we're a little more aggressive. And if you look at it, it makes sense because it's a full gut and it's abandoned, it's vacant. So when you spin all of these things together, it's not that like AI is just replacing people, but it gives a very, very capable and lean team extraordinarily high leverage where you can do a lot more deals like this. And it becomes very systematic because there's a step by step by step by step process from doing market analysis, figuring out what data you want to pull from SIFMAP, validating what you just pulled that it's actually going to work before you spend a dollar, then niching down into the top zip codes and top neighborhoods that you just found from all that research, and then going really, really deep and moving from the cheapest to the most expensive touch. And then what I mean by that is you're going to call all the people first that are in that top neighborhood. And then when they don't answer, you'll send direct mail to them. And if they don't answer your calls or you can't mail them like this particular property, you use these AI workflows to go really, really deep and give it to your best team members, and you just crush everybody else because who's doing this, right? I'm going to pause. I know I just said a ton of stuff. What questions do we have about anything?
Ty, I think one of the most important ones that I saw that was in there was non-disclosure states. So, what's the process flow for this, and how does it work and function in non-disclosure states?
Yeah. So, when I first said, let's see if I can find it. So I said, hey, can you run the comping skill workflow? And a skill, when I was talking about these very specific workflows, this is what I mean. Like a skill is what you teach AI. It's like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to comp. And it's like, great, understood. And it will follow that skill or that workflow every single time. So it's very stable and consistent. So the way I built it, let me see if it actually brings it up in here before I start just yapping. So it says done the two bucket engine RAM. And what that means is there's one bucket for non-disclosures and there's one bucket for disclosures. And you can run different methodologies of comping because you have to think like in Texas, whenever you're, making an appraisal, like remember I was an appraiser, you just because that it's a non-disclosure doesn't mean that you can't just like give an appraisal to anyone. And there are different methodologies that are used for each of these. So what we do for non-disclosures is you come in and you pull first tax assessed value, and then you pull active listings, and then you pull anything that was basically available from like a public disclosure perspective, and you run algorithms on each of those. And there's something called adjustments in the world of appraising, where basically, like, let me see if there's any on here. There's not a good example. Let me see if I can find one. By the way, all of these also come in Excel files. I just wanted to show you guys kind of the 10,000 foot view first, and I'll show you what this is the actual comp report. And then there's going to be a good example of it here. So this is what the output actually looks like that we load into our CRM and all that good stuff. So whenever you come over to the adjustment detail, each of these, and this is what AI absolutely destroys. You can make adjustments based off the square footage, based off the bathrooms, based off the lot size, the garages, the market conditions, and all of those, very minute details, and you can pull all the information together that you have access to and then just make assumptions on the rest. And that's basically how you comp in non-disclosures. And the problem with this is like if you did all this manually, this is going to take like 2 hours because you have to say, well, this one's a little bit less on the square footage, so we're going to take $5,780 away. And the bathrooms on this one is a little bit less, so we're going to take 7,500 bucks away from this one. And the market conditions in this particular pocket in this neighborhood are a little bit better. The homes move faster, so we're going to give you an extra $2,000 because it's like dozens of math formulas. And that's how I designed the comping workflow to basically work in any area, is it goes really deep in all those pockets. Does that make sense?
What other questions you guys have? I know this was a lot.
Is this legal? It's legal. I'll give you the step-by-step process on how to plug this into VS Code. I don't know who, man, I'm surprised someone said VS Code. Yeah, so the challenge, which if you guys want, it's in the guide that I gave you guys. We can put it in the actual chat here, but we have something called the 5-day deal flow challenge where there's 40 different guides to set all of this up. And that's like, I'm going to go through it live. And I'm also going to walk you through step by step. And then there's also walkthroughs of guides, screenshot by screenshot by screenshot on how to set all this stuff up. So yeah, How does this work in non-disclosure states? ChatGPT, just my opinion, they suck. They're not nearly as good as Claude, but you could make it work, I would say, for that. The guides, those are all in the challenge itself, and the guide just takes you through that entire step-by-step process of what I did holistically. But if you wanted the guides for everything, it's like hundreds of pages, and that's what the challenge is all about. We would give you the guides on this call, but I know it's going to spawn more questions than and probably not do a lot of good because the whole point of the challenge is you're implementing it day by day, and then you come to the beginning of the next day and basically say, hey, here are all the questions that I had that I couldn't get done, and we'll answer it in this kind of fashion here. I have a really fancy dispo process if you guys want to see that too, but the way I have mine set up, you can run this like right in Claude. Let me see if I can show you guys an example of that. So this, if you didn't want to use like this kind of interface that I custom built for myself, you can use all this stuff and you can see ARV estimate vacant property. Like this is one that we also did, but you can do all this inside of Claude. I think it works a lot better whenever you do it here because it's preloaded and it's just a little bit cleaner and works a little bit better in general. But there are, let's see, I'll find you guys the example. So right here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but these are all of the different skills that we run on a daily basis. So we have deep prospecting, deal analyzer, buyer prospector skill, and I'll show you guys an example of what that one actually looks like. Can you pull in the top 5 buyers in Knox County, Tennessee by using the buyer prospector skill? And I want you to remove anyone that's institutional. I'm just trying to focus exclusively on the cash buyers that would be realistic for investing and wholesaling and flipping, etc. And what this does is basically how it works. And you'll ask it to do it, and it's going to open this buyer prospector skill. And I can't open it here because it's just a bunch of code, but each of these have their own specific workflows that we've just ran into or people from the challenge have ran into. So the rehab and real estate one is one I just showed you. The probate property finder, this is one where a lot of students are running into this, but they would go to pull probate data directly from the county itself and they would only be given a case number, which is virtually useless. So the probate skill actually pulls in the missing data and backfills it. That way you have a complete like record that you can load into Sift. But that's just an example of what you can do. The playbook skill creates SOPs, so you can load in like a Loom video or a recording, and it will take the transcription and then make a bunch of different guides and SOPs for your VAs. The phone validator skill is that workflow that I was talking about that scores every one of the properties from the most likely to answer to the least likely. And then first to market helps you find county data locally at pretty much any county in the US. And then this is the old version, the deep prospecting skill. And the rest are just more like very specific workflows inside of SIFT, like the SIFT market research skill that I just showed you guys. That's what produced that Excel file in the very beginning that I showed you. And then while this is running, this project has a buyer prospector implementation, and it does exactly this. It locates nationwide buyers, filters by the county, excludes institutional iBuyers, government entities, and scores who's the best fit for a wholesale and exports it into Excel. So that's basically what that flow does. Any questions while that's running? Yeah. The way, so that Patrick's question about you guys have APIs. We have an API that's coming to SIF that we're releasing that makes this a little bit more seamless and a little more reliable, but I have a ton of different APIs that I've plugged in, but I use Claude a lot more than just the real estate business. I use it for all of our businesses. I use it a little bit for my personal lives too, but yeah, these are all APIs, skills, and a lot of thousands of hours of work to assemble it all together. Yeah, this is the challenge that we're running on June 1st, and we do it on a monthly basis. So if you can't make June, there's always going to be a July one. And if you're like, I want to do it now, all the recordings are available for the most recent cohort that you can just go through and watch. I update a lot of the content every month. I'm sure people who have gone through it would attest that every 3 months, it's probably radically different because of how fast AI is moving and also all the feedback that we get back from using it ourselves and also using it like with the community and things like that. Ladies, is there anything that you think I missed?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Guys, what questions? You guys are asking a lot of questions in the chat. I appreciate your guys' engagement. What questions do you guys have on anything that Ty covered? Could be relevant to data, could be any questions that you guys have. I mean, we have a little bit of time, obviously, that we wanted to leave open for some Q&A. Ty, I want to thank you, man, because I know you always come in here and drop like massive knowledge on people. And sometimes AI, everybody loves a little bit of AI, but seeing it in practice to actually make you guys money is the key to it all. That's like what I preach to, a lot of our students right now is everybody loves taking a project to 80% completion inside of any type of AI, but getting it from 80 to 100 is like the hardest part. And like that's what, I use all of your guys' stuff, and that's really what it helped me do was take it from, the 80 preliminary to the 100% for scraping all the data for me and utilizing it. So if you guys want to hear like from a practical terms, like everything that Ty hit on today, like I'll give you guys a legitimate statistic, quarter over quarter in my own personal business. So in my own personal business, I fix and flip, I wholesale. I'm in a like kind of a wider area in Ohio. Pretty much everywhere except for like the Columbus market. And I am heavy with cold calling, and it's actually crazy. I'm literally looking at it right now on the screen. Last quarter, I was at 53 leads per contract in cold calling. With incorporating this process and getting it like really narrowed in on the data side of everything, I've able to eliminate two cold callers. So I eliminated the amount of callers of what I needed. I added another caller back into first to market, so more of like isolated like probates and foreclosures. But my leads per contract has gone from 52 down to 38 so far this quarter. So like every 38 leads of what we're generating from cold calling, from better data, all of the processes of what he showed you to enrich those things from like the neighborhood level, going where the actual investor volume is versus I don't know if you guys have ever called like the $750,000 house that has literally no distress, but it like signals some random indicator, right? We've all been in those situations. But really going to where we add a lot of value outside of price. Like that's kind of the core to like us as investors. We have to be unique in value outside of pricing. So I will tell you that following this process, like step by step, and like I've gone through the challenge, I think what, Ty, like 6 times. I
A
hop on
lot.
it every single month. And I always learn something new, right? There's new innovation, there's new processes, there's new advancements in certain things. And my God, it is completely different from the first time to the time of what we're going to run even for this upcoming month. So, I can't encourage enough. It's like the cost of like a dinner, literally. And it's like it's been super valuable to my business by reducing the amount of volume of what I need, amount of data that I need. So the days of needing like 50,000 records really isn't practical anymore. Like, sure, you can do that if you have the scale for the budget. But really, like the riches has always been in the niches, and it's more important now than ever from what I'm seeing across the industry. Like, this is the path for success.
I'll touch on that too. So we like this the whole point of what we teach, it's the same thing at $300 a month as opposed to like 50,000 a month. And like our biggest users are doing like 5 to 10 million in revenue a year. The only difference is like whenever you're doing these deep prospecting flows and sequential marketing and like all of these frameworks, if you will, you do it in that top neighborhood in that top zip code, and the only difference is when you're doing at a bigger scale is you have a larger team and they're covering way more of an area. So imagine doing it for 30 zip codes at the same time and deep prospecting like the top 1 to 5% of leads that are in each of those areas. And that level of like granularity and tracking and systems in general, that's what lets you scale to like have a very stable like 2, 3K cost per acquisition, even when you're spending like 30,000 a month. That's the difference, right? Whereas a lot of people will just come in and they do kind of mass marketing. Like, I just had a call yesterday with a big user that was like, "Hey man, can you help me?" And they're doing 200,000 texts in Smarter Contact every month. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, you don't have to do all that work and like take all these leads when you could just take that and then implement this system, probably do less work. And this is kind of a side thing, but from like a kind of core values perspective, like this house that I just showed you guys, like they're not gonna be able to sell this thing. Like it has to, this is like the actual like problem solving element of like what real estate investors actually do. And you're honestly like helping people more and getting way bigger deals because you're focusing on like the top of the top of the top. And then obviously you're going to expand down. There's going to be scenarios where they're not houses like that, but there's still deals and things like that. But yeah, that's how you scale it. This is
Love
still
it.
going, by the way.
Yeah, guys. So, what questions do you guys have? If you guys want, you can post them in there, or I can bring you guys up and you guys can ask the questions live while you got myself and you got Ty. Any questions from today?
Ooh, I'll show I don't think I showed this, but the where somewhere in here the yeah, here's the rehab estimate. This thing is crazy. I meant to show it earlier, but so it'll give you like a hotel scope as well, but obviously we're not going to be a hotel in this thing because it's just never going to happen. But this breaks down the material costs, the labor breakdown, the let's see, the timeline here. So this one is trained on our own data. So like this is like roughly what our timelines actually are and stuff like that. But the big thing at the back end is it kind of gives you like a holistic view of each of these and then a room by room detail of what each of these costs actually are so you can measure it. And the same framework that the comping skill has, where it actually pulls in the details of the like room specs, the square footage, the bed bath counts, all of that. It uses that same detail and then applies it in the actual rehab cost. So all of these are based off the size of the home too. And that's why we run the rehab costs for, or sorry, the comping flows first, because it pulls in all that data, then uses that same, details in general and ties it in there. That way it's, nice and, continuous, if you will. So yeah, that's cool. And then this guy, it's going to be done in a second, but I forgot I actually did this for my own stuff. You see where it says buyer prospecting knocks? This is what the output of this dispo flow actually looks like. It will give you a buyer scorecard where it breaks down the name, the type, like the type of purchasing that it actually does. So like you can see this one holds properties versus actually flips them. It gives portfolio details of like the amount of money that they have in each of their actual breakdowns. The heat map of the top zip codes. By the way, you notice how there's a ton of investors that are in 37917 actually purchasing. If we come back to Market Finder, I'm pretty sure if I swap that to zip codes, 37917 is my second best zip code. And it happens to have the most amount of investors actually purchasing there. I didn't really touch on it because there wasn't enough time, but like the market finder can also be used as kind of a North Star to get an idea of the easiest places to wholesale properties as well. Because if there's a ton of investor transactions in this zip code by the market finder, and then we use that same buyer prospecting skill, and like there are a ton of active investors buying there. And then it gives a contact list of each of these people and what these people actually are the uncovered signing members of these entities if it could find it. So like John P. Albert is not the actual person that's actually purchasing it. The entity is, but he was the person that was uncovered there. So it just shows you an example of like the depth whenever you like spin it all together. So yeah. Um wait, this is a does it that is a good question. So there's a guy who uses Home Depot's unofficial API and it actually logs in and pulls in the SKUs of this workflow, which is crazy.
Interesting.
And it's it's a good idea. So people often use Lowe's, Home Depot, or Amazon for the material for this workflow as well. That's what we do.
Hmm. I need to test that. I have all those SKUs inside of our company cam, so I might I might try that, see what it does.
I've not tested that because we're like we just know, but yeah, that would be the next layer, I think.
Yeah, that'd be sweet. Cool.
Cool
What else,
guys.
guys? We marketing buyers through data sifts. What does the workflow look like? Yeah, I mean, Ty, you want to show the buyer workflow really quick, and we can kind of wrap it at that.
hmm I would use that skill that I just showed you, and you see how it gave, let's see, you see how it gave these like people. So there are other flows where you can pretty much have it pull together all of the different like let's see, it might be this guy here. Yeah, so it gives in here. You see how it has all these address, information and things like that. What you can do is come inside a Sift and actually tie that into records. So the whole point of records is you're putting all the people that you're marketing to in one place and then tracking every single marketing action in order. And you could do the same thing for Dispo. So if you wanted to come here and add data to it. And we're going to be uploading a list that's not in SIF right now. It's not skip traced. And you can do buyer prospecting is how we do it. So, so this list is going to be people that we know are buyers that we pulled from that specific workflow, and then you can come in and market to them in the same way. So imagine I've uploaded a list here and you've gone through the whole process of, uploading all this information in. And let's just say that this Janie Bean person is a buyer and there are no phone numbers. Of course, the one I clicked on didn't have numbers, but does this one not have one either? So I'm just trying to find a random one. Imagine that there was a phone number here that you found through the buyer workflow of uploading them. You could do the same process of actually pulling them all in here, reaching out to them, tracking all this good stuff. And then in the same path, if you wanted to come to SIF map, and we can go down to Knox County, it's going to zoom on in. This is probably this is really, really good if you already have a property in place, or you can pull it for the whole county itself. But you can come in and you can do. See. Sorry, we have so many fields now and we change them all the time. So I'm looking for a very specific one. Document type, where it says investor transaction type right there. Go hit flip, hit apply there. And this is going to pull up all of the flips that have happened over pretty much like the amount of the data that we've had available over the last like many, many years. And you can put another filter in place and basically say in the last like 6 months, like, well, who are all the people who have actually like purchased and flipped a property? So you can change this from 26 to, we'll do May of 26. We'll just do the first, apply that filter, and that's going to go down to 445. And if you look at the history here, you can see that this individual purchased this property and then flipped it. And you can tell that because I know it's kind of hard to see, but it says Rehab Tennessee LLC, and they purchased this in April 21st of 24 for 150 grand, and they flipped it like right under a year later for 360K. So you can do this entire process and these are 445 different flips that happen. You can pull them in, select all of them, and just add all these records to your account and do that same process where you actually upload them and do marketing directly to them to actually build out your buyers list. So those are the two paths that you could do for that. SIF works for commercial really well. So what that same workflow that I just showed you on the buyer side, you can run this and also uncover the signing members of entities of people who own like maybe multifamily or warehouses or mobile home parks, whatever it is that you're doing, and do that same kind of process there too. Cool.
Love it. All right, guys. Well, let's see. Commercial, can it handle CRE with a condo map? On commercial, can
I
it
don't know
handle
what you mean
CRE?
specifically by that. Julie, if you email me, I can probably send me an example and I'll tell you. I'll put my email right there. Don't spam me.
Put you on my list.
Yeah.
All right, cool guys. Ty, I appreciate you coming in, man. I know this is always super informative. A lot of people saying this was awesome today, so appreciate you popping in and just dropping some knowledge, obviously, in this system, right? Can't advocate it for enough, guys. Like this is really what's helped me propel a lot in my business. I can tell you myself, Josh and Tiff. I know a ton of the students of who we work with all use these types of things, so it's super helpful. And once again, I think in a market where it's getting more and more difficult to find really good deals. Like this is exactly what we need to pivot almost back to. It's kind of crazy the concept of like going back to the basics. This is kind of what this is, but using it with obviously all the cool things of AI and understanding how all that will function and help you guys out in the grand scheme of it. So, guys, if you guys felt that today was helpful, Once again, like if you thought this was like an hour of a glimpse, imagine what their 5 day challenge is. So it's this times what? It's like what? How many hours a day, Ty? Like roughly three ish.
About 3.5, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, 3.5, 3-ish. So imagine getting to talk to Ty for almost 20 hours, right? It's awesome. A lot of information, obviously inside there. So if you guys are data sift users, or if you guys are trying to find like an area or a platform that can help you guys, obviously I think it's a platform that anybody in any state of the business, whether you're just getting started out, or you're at the scale stage, like it's effective for everybody across the board. Myself, that does anywhere from 6 to 10 contracts per month, or Josh and Tiff that are at the 20 to 30 level, are all using variations. This today, obviously, you guys know that we love doing these community lives. Once again, trying to give back to you guys, and give you guys some knowledge of helping you guys, propel forward in your guys' business. It's really the core of why we do these. So we do them every single week, outside of the week of what we have as far as our workshop, right? And Amanda says I'm being a robot. Am I being a robot
Yeah.
You're
doing
good
this?
now. You're good now. You
Uh,
were just sounding like you were what's her name from the Jetsons.
oh man, Judy Jetson or whatever. Yeah, our internet has been the bane of my existence, so I should just work from home for the rest of my life. So once again, guys, I appreciate you guys all hopping on here. So if you guys ever want to get on these calls, we do them once a week. Amanda, how do they get sent out? How do they get informed if they want to hop on more of these calls?
So we switched them FJ to weekly. So every week, it'll be every Thursday. We switched them also to 4 p.m. This is the last one that'll be earlier. Occasionally, if things come up, we might change it, but guaranteed every week on Thursdays. And we send out through the community in the community chat, as well as if you are on our active email list, but definitely within school. I post it every single week, or it may be Tiff that posts, it just depends. And I believe next week is on how we run seller calls to close more deals, I believe is the main topic for that one.
Fun one. My favorite one. Everybody loves closing deals. So cool, guys. Well, we appreciate you guys hanging out with me and Ty. Ty, thank you for coming in, my friend. And hope to see some of you guys on the challenge on June 1st. That'd be cool to see some of you guys on there. So without further ado, I'll see you guys. See you guys next week.
See you guys. Thanks.
See ya.